welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at a brand new, actually this is
It's
almost like a preview of Point Blank, V.S. for Victory from Lock and Load Publishing. So, this game, we have an advanced copy of this, and this is a production copy. We played this as a prototype like 4 years ago at WBC with Sean Drulinger, who's the designer.
And man, it was really fun. I remember thinking, this is very, very cool.
Yeah, so it's a two-player tactical World War II card-based game. Mm-hmm. And I say that because it's not a card game necessarily, but it's a tactical game. We have a map out, but you can play it without. But it's, a bunch of different units, different types, combined arms. You have an action deck that powers those.
Yep. In
a similar way to something like Combat Commander, where it's got actions of like move and attack and rally and all that kind of stuff. And that also serves as the dice rolling. Mm-hmm. But you're moving around on this grid, fighting over objectives based on this scenario. That's the core of this game. If you've played something like Upfront, this shares some similar concepts, maybe some DNA in the past.
It's not exactly the same, but it does share, like the terrain and the movement.
You move into a space. When you resolve that, you draw a terrain card from the deck, and you've no idea what it is. And it has defensive modifiers. Though little bits and pieces like that are similar, but how you resolve everything, the actual combat resolution is basically the same system that's in Lock and Load Tactical that they've applied to this. So you get a pretty crunchy combat system at times where you're like, this is my firepower, plus I've got a leader bonus, and I'm shooting into this terrain where you're concealed.
Are they moving?
Yeah. Or
were they spotted?
A bunch of modifiers, and then you roll dice by pulling cards, and it's, this is my attack value. You're going to roll a defensive value with your terrain. And then you compare those, and then if the attacker exceeds the defender, you have to now make like an injury check or a damage check is what they call it. And so then you roll against your morale to see if you become shaken or if you become reduced into a half squad, that kind of stuff. So you get that really, really nice crunchy tactical system, but it's these beautiful cards.
Oh, yeah.
In this kind of spatially oriented game. Like, I cannot speak to how nice the production value is on this.
Yeah.
It's very, very nice.
Well, I remember when we went to WBC, 4 or 5 years ago, I remember walking by that table and seeing it out, and I don't think anyone was playing it. I remember looking at it going, the immediate thought I had was, oh, that's kind of like Upfront. And then I was looking at the cards, and I thought, oh, it's a little like Combat Commander.
Yeah.
Because you've got to match, like you said, those symbols on the cards with the symbols on your characters or soldiers, and then do certain events. And each of those abilities is very, very different. There is a lot to like in this game. I mean, it is very interesting. I think it's very fun. I think its sweet spot is its quicker scenarios.
Yes.
Tonight we played a 2-turn scenario, which is going through that deck twice. And then we played a 4-turn scenario, and it's a lot.
Yeah, those you got to understand, when you play the short scenarios, it's kind of quick and dirty. You get in and you get fighting, and it's you got smaller forces typically, and those are a bit more fragile, so it kind of like tips one way or the other.
Yeah.
But the bigger scenarios, you got a ton of dudes, and like
well, some have a ton of dudes, and the one we played, I had a bunch of guys. You had like 6 or 8.
But when you expand your forces, it can feel very sluggish because you're like, I got to move all these guys, but I've still got this small hand of cards, and it's like, and so you kind of feel that command and control stuff a bit more. But the other part, the scenario book that comes with this is an ungodly amount of scenarios in it. There's a ton to play, but on top of that, it has design your own scenarios in it. So if you like the game in a particular way, you can make ones that fit that parameters with... Yeah. There's
so many cards.
So many units, so much stuff in the box. You can make so many different scenarios. This could be kind of a... This is the only war game in my collection. You could do that.
Yeah, you very well could. I like, as you're looking through this deck here, I mean, you've got several different types of armored cars. M21, M20. You've got 3 or 4 different types of tanks. You have trucks, jeeps. I mean, there's just ungodly amount of
Yeah, and there's like just stacks of cards in this. And what's nice is, you've got like different Sherman variants or different, anti-tanks. You've got like I think there's a M10 Jackson in here.
Yeah.
Like the differences between all of those seem very minimal on paper. They do have significant game effects. The difference between hitting on a 9 or less and an 8 or less is a lot. But like part of these kinds of games where you've got a ton of stuff and it is the flavor of the thing.
Yeah.
But like I enjoy that it's not just generic tank.
Yeah.
Like, at this scale, you're like, yeah,
It's very specific.
this is an easy 8.
Yeah.
That's very different looking and different feeling from an M4 Sherman.
Yeah.
Like statistically on the cards, the difference isn't huge.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You get some of the feels of it. Having a Jeep nipping around doing stuff.
Yep.
You're like, yeah, it's my little Jeep guy.
Yeah.
How
With
different.
this little Greyhound here. I mean, it was just kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's really that effective, but it was interesting trying to use that against, say, your Panzer IV that was very hard to hit, very hard to penetrate, it's a tough tank, right?
Yes.
I also liked in the German, sorry, I'm losing my voice, how many different, we saw Panzer IIIs, 4s,
Yeah,
4Hs.
3s, 4s. I think there's Marders. There's Panthers, Tigers. I think there's Yag Panthers.
It's just a ton.
There's Stug
right.
3s. There's just so much stuff. I put it all back in the box.
Got
There's
it.
just so much of it.
To me, when you can put a game together,
Pizzas.
you could play this, like you said, for months.
Yeah.
Just doing the different scenarios, learning the abilities of the different tanks, the different weapons, the different... And the other thing is very cool. The leaders are all very, very different.
Yeah.
Some of the leaders are very good. I had a couple leaders I'm like, oh, that's very...
Situational.
It's very situational.
They're great in that situation.
Right. One of them, it's like, I could control a sniper shot when it was in that sector, one around. And I'm like, that's pretty cool, because there were 3 or 4 sniper cards in that deck. You used them quite effectively. I don't know, really like that. I also like the difference in the terrain cards.
Yeah.
Terrain cards provide, cover, a defense bonus. There's all the way from open and roads, which offer 0 cover.
Yes.
All the way to, I think, stone building is the best. There's a church. There's woods.
The church is an objective, so it's not in that deck in that
but
sense.
it still offered 4,
it's
which is the
strong.
same as a stone building.
Yeah.
And, that's really cool. And the concept of I'm moving ahead, not necessarily knowing what terrain I'm going into.
Yeah.
And then, oh, crap, I just moved from a 3 defense, whatever, woods or whatever, into a clear, and now I'm a sitting duck.
And that was always one of my favorite parts of up front.
It's great.
Oh, I'm going to move, and you're desperately hoping that your opponent doesn't play like wire on you. And you get some of that here where you're like, I am committing to advancing.
Yeah.
And then you draw that clear open terrain, and you're like...
You gotta live with it. Now, when you move laterally, so in the area, you have one terrain, you can actually move laterally.
Yeah, you kind of like stay within your sector.
Right, but you move and you
find...
throw that new terrain out, and you might say, oh, that's terrible. I'm actually going to decline that, and I'm just going to stay where I was. There's just a lot of really cool strategic things about that. So using the terrain, advancing properly, spotting units is always a cool thing.
Yeah.
That's a hallmark, I think, of...
That's freaking hard in this game,
it's terribly hard, especially when you're in good cover, defensive bonus terrain. But that, in Lock and Load Tactical, that's one of the elements.
Yep.
You can't attack things unless you can spot them. And I remember when we played, I think one of our first ones we played was Heroes of the Pacific, was it?
It was, yeah.
And I remember that, how cool this is that I have to spot you. And I like how that's carried over into this game.
I've got these huge 30 cal machine guns, and I can shoot you all the way across the board. If only I could see you.
I can't spot you because it's really challenging.
Yeah, and it's you can still shoot people in this one if you can't spot them.
It's just harder.
They have like a natural concealment.
Yeah,
and it's hard to get
which
around.
Which I think is a better way to adjudicate it, because you're right. I can't attack those guys because I've never spotted them, which makes perfect sense. But I like here where, you can go ahead and take a pot shot. Maybe you'll get lucky. You'll spray that kunai grass.
Maybe.
And you might hit something. I'm talking about Heroes of the Pacific. There's no kunai grass here. But that's a very cool element. I also really like the different weapons, from bazookas to satchel charges, I had a radio in that last scenario.
Yeah,
That
calling
was
the off-board
pretty
artillery.
fun.
That reminded me a little bit of Combat Commander in the way that
Oh,
works,
absolutely, yeah.
which
Because
is-
when you roll a 1, you break
it
the
breaks
radio.
and it goes away.
And that never happened to me. And I used that 3 or 4 times, almost hitting you every single time.
Yeah.
But, you know, you got BARs, you got MG42s and 34s for the Germans. You've got, what else do you have? M1919s. There's just a real great variety.
Yeah.
The other thing I really like, some of the scenarios are based on claiming the objectives, capturing them.
Yes.
Right? And each unit has different colored flags on them. So a lot of your infantry have one white flag, which stands for a soft target.
Yeah, there's real names for it. I just don't remember.
But then some are black flags, and they're more mechanized units or bazookas,
or
heavier firepower.
They're anti-armor units in some capacity.
So some of those objectives, it's like, oh, you need to have 2 white flag units and a black flag unit. So trying to get those up into those spaces, that can be very challenging.
Well, and it's, you know, do I do that with an airborne unit who has 2 white flags who are holding a bazooka? I can send 1 unit on there to take that.
Right.
They can technically hold that, but they're very fragile
Well, they're
because it's
yeah.
1 unit.
Well, and I think that bridge was a 1.
Yeah, or
cover.
do I bring a tank and 2 or 3, you know, a couple infantry squads to like bolster that? I can absorb a few more hits to really hold on to it.
Yeah. This game, really well put together. I like it a lot. You know, we use this custom kind of canvas style.
Yes, which
I really liked this.
Currently, it's something that's going to be available post-release.
Kind of as an add-on or something.
It'll be kind of a separate
$25,
purchase.
$30.
Lock and Load are going to open it up of like, hey, who wants to order this?
Yeah.
And so you just kind of submit almost as like a pre-order, and then they'll custom order those.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a one-off type of thing if you want
To me, this is really worth it. I thought it was really great. Really
well, it's
liked
nice
it.
because it's canvas, so it has that texture. So
Yep.
moving cards is very easy
a
to
little
kind of
easier.
pick them off. Then
Maybe we should have taped these seams.
yeah,
Because that's not going to peel away.
I might consider doing that.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to have to untape it when you fold it up.
The normal game comes with extremely heavy paper
Very
ones,
thick.
which is fine, but picking them up off of that is a little bit more challenging. Or you can play with no maps, and they have just the little B2s and the B1 counters.
Right.
You can do it that way,
that.
and then you don't have to ever move your guys. You just change the counter, and that's the...
Which is cool. It's relative position in that regard.
And they say, play it a couple times with the maps. Once you figure out the grid, and you have that kind of ingrained, it's much easier to do those.
Yeah.
And it takes up a little bit less space and all that
I think that makes sense. To me, there's 2 elements of this system that I think some people are not going to like, but I really like it. One, the built-in dice rolling on the cards.
Yeah, I know some people aren't a fan. I like it, though.
That's why they include dice.
Yeah.
So if you really don't like that, you can try your luck. And if you're a good roller, we know a couple people that seem to roll 5s and 6s all the time. But you're going to pull those cards. So that closed system, I really like it. I think some people aren't going to like that. I think the other thing is, in order to activate your units, it's about getting the right cards.
Yeah.
Or using the cards you've got in the best way to get the best result.
Well, and that's something that I like about this game over something like Combat Commander.
Mm-hmm.
Combat Commander, if you don't got the cards, you can't do anything.
You can't move, you can't move.
In this one, like your worst case scenario is you can discard a card to activate one ability on one unit. At least you can kind of
have an option.
It's your limited op. You can do something.
Yeah.
It's not, there might not be much, but you can do something, which I think I like that a little bit more, where you're not just totally hosed.
But I think the reason I bring those 2 up, they don't concern me. I don't think they concern you.
I like it.
I think some people are going to be concerned about that lack of perceived control. And frankly, I like it, right?
Yeah.
No plan survives contact. That's exactly what this game is based on.
Yeah, at times it's very slow going because you don't have the cards. At
Yep.
times you've got all the firepower in the world,
Yep.
but you can't ready your guys to utilize it because they're all fatigued and spent. It's great.
And the really funny thing about those cards, and it's hilarious to me, early on in that second game we played tonight, the one that we did the 2-hour playthrough, every time I did a shot, I was looking at the icons that I was pulling on top of those cards.
That's all the moves.
It was a ton of moves, man. And it was like every time, it was a move. And now that's gone. And then I'd see you doing, that was a move. And it's deliciously frustrating.
Yes.
Because it's just so chaotic. That's why I like Combat Commander in kind of the same way. You don't always get what you want. You just got to do what you can with what you've got.
And you can do a little bit more in this one with that one.
Yes,
so it's
there's some more options.
Slightly less
positive. Yeah. So I think everybody just needs to understand that I don't say that because that's not a bad thing to me. Some people don't like that. They want to be in control.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily what this game is about. But overall, very interesting game.
Oh yeah.
Very fun to play. I like the quick hitting scenarios, the 1, 2, 3 round scenarios. To me, you get a ton of units, you still got the same mix of cards, and you're not able to move your guys. So stay with the smaller scenarios. I feel like they're more satisfying, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll be. What I'll do before I say anything else, I'll show you how this works a little bit, and then we can wrap up with some final thoughts. So here's a look at the board. You can see we're playing on these canvas maps, which these are kind of like a one-off at the moment. There'll be a pre-order for them, and I think they'll kind of be a one-time thing. So if, it's kind of like the canvas mats that you get with Blue Panther does these for some of their games. These are done by Lock and Load, but they do them with an independent company. But the normal maps are these very heavy, extremely matte paper. You can see there's glare on some of these cards. Nothing on this paper. So that's what you normally get. So just know that that's kind of something that might be a little bit different from what you're getting here. So you can see the board, however, is divided up into these sectors and these areas. So basically, you've got these big rectangular areas that have different terrains in them, and your units move through those like they would in a grid fashion, basically. Again, you can opt to use those little counters. So there's like a C0 counter and a C1 counter. There's different counters that you can use, because this is a huge board. A bunch of it we're not using, so it reduces space and maybe make some of the movement a little bit less intense if you do that. But this is a tactical game, so each of the different scenarios in it will have a different goal, but most of the goals will be on these objective cards, and the objectives are usually like a terrain piece. So this is a bridge. It has a 1 defensive terrain value, and you need both a black flag and 2 white flags to capture that. And this eye that is half open and half closed means that it's degrading terrain going through it. This wooden building is a piece of regular terrain. You can see there's different kind of a color palette for the objectives versus the terrain. The terrain's all this kind of a sepia-style brownish, and the objectives are all these very grey-green colors, just to help differentiate those. But this is a fully closed eye, which means it's blocking terrain going through it, not just degrading, and has a much stronger defensive terrain value. But you can also tell it's not an objective because there's no indicators of the things that you need to occupy it to be able to capture it. Something like clear terrain has a 0 defense value. It doesn't have an eye because it's neither blocking nor is it degrading terrain. It's just kind of open, so to speak. But as you move through areas, you will draw from this draw deck of terrains. And there's like a default deck of cards of terrain. And then some scenarios will say, put in a bunch of bocage, or put in a bunch of minefields and wire. And there's like a whole other stack of other terrains that you will put into it based on whatever scenario it is and the kind of terrain that you're playing in and what's more likely to come up. But essentially, the core of this game, you've got units. So we've got some infantry here. We got some AFVs. There's a jeep here specifically. More infantry. And they've got some support weapons. So this second line squad has a bazooka. This infantry squad has a radio, which they use to call in off-board artillery. This infantry squad has a BAR. This infantry squad has a BAR and it has a leader attached to it as well. Up here there's an M8 Greyhound. We've got a Panzer IV-H for the Germans. Oh, that's like just off screen here up here. But there's also a flaming wreck. There was an M4 Sherman here. It got blown up and it became a wreck, a piece of terrain, which was very fun. But that's, it's moving units and firing units through line of sight. If you're shooting through a stone wall, there's going to be a negative modifier if you're shooting into the road, because it's degrading terrain. If you shoot through 2 degrading terrains, well, you can't, because 2 degradings equals 1 blocking. You can't shoot from this building to this stone wall, because this wooden building in between is blocking terrain. All those kind of usual line of sight style things that you would expect. So, you can be in this stone wall, you can shoot through clear terrain, through 1 degrading terrain, through a blank, and into this one. You can make that shot. Now, range, you have to have the range, so the BAR has 3 range, 1, 2, 3, they can't get that far. But you're looking at different weapons, so your 30 cal, 1, 2, 3, 4 could make it, for example. So lining up your weapons to be able to make the shots that you want to. Very tactical in its nature, everything that you would expect from a tactical style game. Infantry, AFVs, off-board artillery, combined arms. You've got to make it all work together. And again, one of the things that's really cute about this is, I've got to go and take the crossroads. You need to have a black flag and a white flag on it to occupy and to hold that objective. Well, this infantry squad provides you 1 white flag. This infantry squad provides a white flag, and they have an anti-armor weapon, so they have a black flag on it too. So this squad, with this bazooka, can hold the crossroads. This squad, with the BAR, cannot. They need support to be able to hold it. And I just really like that way you have to think about the loadouts of your teams, who you give your support weapons to, or do you bring a tank along with you, because the tanks have black flags on them. We have any flags? Yeah, so here's a M4 Sherman. So you bring up a tank and an infantry squad, they can hold the crossroads, because they can fight anything that can kind of come up against them. I just think it's a really nice way of doing that. But basically, so that's kind of the types of things you're looking at. It's moving units, occupying objectives, trying to destroy units from counterattacking you, things like that. So the main core of the game is in these action cards. You'll have a hand of 5 of these. And the action cards themselves, let's go more around. So the action cards have an action, or sometimes they've got 2 actions on them. You can choose either one of these, but not both to do. But they also have your die rolls on them. So anytime you need to make a die roll, you flip a card from the action deck. This is a 2. You flip a card from the action deck. This is a 6. Right? This is a 5. And you have this closed dice system in here. Now, it's most die rolls are on a single d6, so you don't get the same bell curve that you do in something like Combat Commander with the extremes of boxcars and snake eyes on the same end. However, there are times you do need to make a 2d6 check, but you just pull 2, and so it's less. That aspect of it is a little less fixed, but you know that if you exhaust all the 1s, like, there's only a limited number of 1s in the deck, right? So you're going to play a card on your turn to do the action. So this lightning bolt is a special action. It means that you can trigger any 1 symbol on any 1 unit. So the units have a blue morale value. They've got red these are machine guns, or it's like it's small arms fire. This black symbol is an HE value. If you're using the main cannon, is an HE focus. And then down here, these are the armor-piercing kind of anti-tank rounds. Most kind of regular units just have a morale and then a combat rating that they can use against soft targets. So I can use this symbol to trigger any one of these abilities. And there's a play aid which lists what all of those are on them. And it's things like moving, attacking, dropping smoke, doing an overrun. I don't remember what the sun one is. I believe... that's Willy Pete. That's doing white phosphorus. Or this grenade is kind of an assault that you can do. And different kind of units have different symbols. So the Jeep can move, attack, recon, and assault. It can't do overrun. They don't have smoke discharges. They can't do white phosphorus. Things like that. This infantry squad over here can move, attack, drop smoke, and the question mark means that they can conceal themselves. That is different. Do I have any of the good? like the airborne can do extra bits and pieces because they're a bit more well-trained or slightly more elite, things like that. So you can use this lightning to match any one of those symbols and trigger that symbol on it. So that's one way to kind of get things out of your card. Or you can do a recon, where you can just do a recon action. You can use a unit to try and spot someone else, and they would become spotted, which means they're easier to hit. You could do an attack. When you play an attack on a card, you can activate everyone in one area, kind of as a stack, so to speak, to perform that attack. If, however, you're using this little lightning bolt to trigger this attack, only that one unit can do that attack. So getting good cards is helpful because it makes you be able to do more powerful things, but unlike in some other card games, it's slightly less restrictive in that you can always do one thing with one person. You're never totally hosed with a really bad hand. You get other symbols like this helmet is a ready action. If guys are fatigued, you can reduce fatigue, and then you can pull a die, and if it's odds, you can remove another fatigue, or you can remove that fatigue from one other unit. If it's evens, you don't get to do that. You can rally someone, so if someone is shaken, you can attempt to roll under their morale. So when you make a morale check, it's 2d6. So you roll 2, we roll a 3 and a 5. That is less than 6, so they become unshaken. There's 3 statuses of being. There's a full squad, there's a shaken squad, and then there's this half squad. And I think a half squad can get shaken again, and then if it takes another shaken, then it's dead. But you can go multiple of those steps in one damage check if things go really poorly for you. That is possible. So using these cards to perform actions, you're going to do one on your turn, and you're going to resolve that, and then it's going to flip over to your opponent's turn. And you basically go back and forth playing these cards, and there's a few other steps in between that of what you're doing. The main thing about this game that's you kind of got to wrap your head around a little bit is the move action. Because attacking is add up your combat values, roll a d6, add that total, and then the defensive value is going to be, let's say we're shooting against this poor infantry squad in the woods. It's going to be a d6 plus my defensive value plus any concealment that I might have. So, and then you just compare them, and whoever's got the most is going to win that. Combat ties go to the defender, basically. If the attacker succeeds, this unit makes a damage check. The difference between the attack and the defense rolls is added to 2d6, and you're still trying to roll under this morale value. So it's very difficult. Once you get hit, it can be very difficult to survive. And then, yes, when you're going to get shaken, you're going to get turned into a half squad, or worse, you can be killed outright if things go very poorly. But, attacking is attacking. That's very much what you would expect. But the movement is something that's really, really important in this game, because you don't execute your move until your next turn. And it's something that I always loved about up front, and I really, really liked it here. So let's say I've got this squad. He's in the clear right now. I'm going to perform a move action. Here, I've got this lightning bolt. We're going to use it to trigger this move action. What you do is you mark them with a moving counter, and you give them the fatigue. Because things like attacking, assaulting, moving, all those gain fatigue that you have to manage and reduce. So you get this, and then what you're going to do is the turn is going to then pass over to your opponent. Your opponent's going to do a bunch of stuff, because if you're marked with a moving counter, it's easier to hit you. And I know that might seem counterintuitive, because hitting a moving target is more difficult, but what it really reflects is that you're much more exposed in this. That's kind of what they're trying to reflect in this. So let's say I've got a German squad in this space. These guys are jumping out of their cover and moving, so that it's easier to kind of attack them at that point. And so you don't just move into this new terrain. You are in the process of moving, and this is kind of your opportunity fire. They don't have to do that. They can do all their other things, but you become more susceptible to it. You expose yourself to what, in other games would be called opportunity fire, but in this would just be a regular fire attack that happens to act as opportunity fire, so to speak. So, let's say I do an attack, you might take some damage, you might become shaken, or I might totally miss. And then what's going to happen is Then at the end of your turn, depending on which way you kind of pointed your little moving counter, the first thing you do on your turn is you're going to start resolving all of your moves. So this guy's going to move. He's now not moving anymore, and he's now in this other clear terrain, but there's a wreck here that he can kind of hide behind as well. So it's a little bit more advantageous. He's not moving anymore, so he's not going to take that negative to be hit, for example. And those guys kind of have moved. And, you know, there's a couple of other different things that you resolve in your upkeep phase. Then you get to play another card. You can move guys, attack guys. But the way that movement, you trigger the movement, and then on your next turn you complete the movement, is something that's really neat. It takes a little bit to get your head around, because at times it can feel a little bit slow, but it's a way to open yourself up to be more vulnerable to be attacked, but also it adds that little bit of tension to it of like, oh, I'm kind of out in the open. And then if you were going to move into this space, on your next turn, there's no terrain here. There has to be terrain, so you just go over to the terrain deck and you pull a terrain, and that's what you've got. We've got a wood building, great. And so then they'd be in that wood building. Another thing that you can do is that you can sit here in the clear and you can kind of move. There's a counter for it. There's an in sector move, because you're like, there's nothing to hide behind, but you can move within this sector to find or try to find something. So you put a move counter on your next turn, you pull a different one, and you replace the clear with the brush because it's a little bit better. You can turn that down though. If you go from a 1 and you pull it clear, you're like, I'm going to stay in the brush, mate. I'm just going to run back to my positions. But normally, when you're moving into an empty space, you just pull the 1 and that's what you've got. And sometimes there's like really bad stuff. There's like wire that you get caught up in. The infantry must use in-sector movement to remove this. You have to take a whole other turn to get rid of it. And you can't refuse that terrain. There's certain terrains you can't refuse. There's mines. You walk into a minefield, very dangerous, things like that. But this is a game of moving, of attacking, and trying to use your combined arms like you would in kind of every other tactical level game. Just the geometry of this and the scale at which you're doing it gives it some really great flavor. Also, it's beautiful to look on the table as well. One of the things that I really enjoyed that, I don't know, some games I think don't get right is I enjoy the armor in this game because you get a roll to hit and then you get a roll kind of to penetrate as well. And I always like when you can do that. But I feel like some games, it's so complicated, or the ranges are so long, and there's so much in between. I think the line of sight and the actual range bands in this game are so, not small, but they kind of are, that it's just it's a lot simpler just to do it. We had a lot of armor going on. There's a number of wrecks in this game. But basically, here, let's get my little Panzer IV out. And we got the Panzer IV here. Let's move this stuff. Panzer IV is hiding behind a stone wall, let's say. And we'll say that he's spotted. And then we've got this M4 Sherman who's in the woods, so just on the edge of the woods, and he's going to try to shoot. And so you have these range bands. This range band in red is 1 to 2 spaces away. This orange is 3 to 5 spaces away, and this is 6+ spaces away. And one thing to note in this game, this is 1 space, this is 2 spaces. So for me to shoot from here to here, that's 1, 2, 3 spaces, even though it's just diagonally adjacent. So this is only 1, 2 spaces away, so you're firing at your best possible kind of attack limit, because you're rolling 2d6 trying to get under this black 8 value. So let's roll 2d6, and we rolled a 4, and we rolled a 3, which is 7. So we're under that, which is great. Are we though? I don't think so, because I think we add our defensive terrain modifiers. So I think we're going to do a big old miss. Yeah. So the terrain modifier is a 2. So we rolled a 9. That's a bummer. So that was a miss. Let's say we had hit. Let's say we rolled a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's still less than the 8. So we shoot and we hit. But then you roll, do we penetrate? And so we're going to do our penetration values. And that's where we just get into a single d6. So you're rolling under to try and hit, and then you're rolling over to try and penetrate. So I've got this 4 plus 1d6 is a 10. That's excellent. And we're going against the Panzer IV's front value. They have a 4 armor value plus 5 is 9. That was very close. And so we defeat them by 1. And so you basically, at that point, your shot penetrates, and then you kind of look at, well, what are we doing here? And I think if you penetrate, it's all over. Because you get penetrated by armor piercing, you don't really survive. Let's just double check before I lie. Well, no, I'm not going to be able to find it. Because it's been too long since I looked at the rules. AFE. Fire attacks, here it is. If the result is exceeded... No, that's... Infantry firepower, we don't care about that. Ordnance, yeah. If the defender's armor defense check is less than the attacker's penetration check, the target is immediately destroyed, and you just replace it with a wreck. So that was an excellent shot. You know, you hit, and then you penetrate, and you die. When you're attacking with like infantry weapons, small arms, and things like that, that's when you're starting to get into these kind of quote-unquote step losses where things will get shaken if they fail, or they might get shaken and reduced if they fail by a certain amount. The armor has a little bit more lethality to it, with regards of, you know, you take a 75mm round to the front and it penetrates your armor. No one's getting out of that in any reasonable state. So he's dead. He becomes this wreck. But that's really the course of this game. You're going to play through this deck. You're going to roll a bunch of these dice, and so you go through it quite quickly. The scenario will have a number of times you have to go through that deck before it's over. And you have to have met your victory conditions before the game ends. Otherwise, you're going to kind of have failed your objective, so to speak. But that's kind of a taste of what this is. You're doing lots of different actions. We're trying to recover fatigue, trying to recover and rally guys who are shaken, trying to move and maneuver, trying to combine attacks, get bonuses from your little leaders. You can spend cards to do all of that, and you're constantly refilling your hand, which is great. But again, if you're up against the clock, which is this deck of action cards, I don't know. I have a blast playing this. What we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at how this game functions, at least a little bit. You can always go and watch a kind of full playthrough with mistakes and everything.
And frankly, Gimpy Gamer has a whole boot camp.
Yes.
That guy is very committed. He puts individual videos together covering one or two topics.
Well, and they're very short, bite-sized.
Yeah,
it's extremely good.
And he has a good talent for it. So go watch those. It's not really what we do.
Well, it's called out in the rule book. Like, you can go and learn like the game through those. It's on the Lock and Load YouTube channel is where that's all posted in a big playlist. You can learn this whole thing. Yeah. And it's very good and very thorough as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I watched those earlier this week.
And in fact, today I watched at least 2 or 3 of those, trying to understand some of the basics.
Yes.
And they were very, very helpful.
So go and check that out as well if you want to learn how to play. One thing we haven't talked about is there is a solo mode.
Yeah.
We have not played it yet. I will be playing that probably this coming week or very soon.
Right.
It reminds me in a way of
the Lock and Load.
The Lock and Load. It's a little bit different, but this is what kind of posture are they in? You roll on a table for the kind of action that they're going to do, and you look at that chart and you follow the flow chart and do it.
Yep.
So eventually, hopefully, playing through that a number of times, it'll become fairly.
Yeah.
You just kind of get it and you start playing through it. I think that might be a really good way to do some of the big ones, where like you're not in a rush. You kind of
you can just do a turn here and there,
But yeah, playing this, I even think about that demo game that we played.
Yeah.
It was fast and it was furious
Yeah.
and we were shooting each other and it was like, it was great.
Yeah.
And, you know, that has continued and persisted in this, but seeing the final product and how much stuff there is,
Yeah.
it's wild.
Well, that box weighs about what would you say, 15 pounds?
Oh gosh, I have the receipt somewhere.
I mean, there's so many. How many cards do you think are in there?
David
Like, is it 1,000?
was saying it was 800 or 900.
It's just so many cards.
Here, it felt like it's more like that. So it's 698 poker cards and 119 mini cards.
So the little cards.
Yeah.
The little cards are the weapons, the leaders.
Yeah, that's like 800 odd cards.
That's a lot, and
it's a ton.
I think their ultimate plan with this is to expand the system and
I sincerely hope that they do.
Go to North Africa, go to the East Front, go to
Pacific, get that
Pacific
kunai
Theater.
grass.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think what they're ultimately going to do with this.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the unboxing video, like this it's got Americans and Germans on the front. It comes with British in the box and Canadians in the box, and some French partisans too.
Yep.
So you got it's more than just US versus Germans, which a lot of core sets of tactical games seem to be. So you get some variety in the box as well.
Yeah.
If you want to kind of go down that road too. Which I appreciate.
I look forward to what they're going to do with this in the future. I think the system is fantastic. And I think you mentioned during our playthrough video some of the keywords on like the Jeep. That fast, that didn't really have a use here. But my guess is when you go into North Africa, that fast is going to mean something.
I think at some point one of the expansions will start calling out those keywords.
Right.
They'll do more things, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I haven't missed something.
To me, this is infinitely expandable.
Oh, yeah.
It's infinitely adjustable. I mean, you could do any number of things. You could add a pack of, it reminds me a little of Warfighter. And how many times have we played Warfighter where it's...
Exactly, and it's that simple. Let's add a Polish deck.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah,
right.
50 cards, and you can now do some Polish scenarios.
Or you get, let's release the early war German deck.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Right. You can do that kind of stuff very easily.
Very easily.
Because with the design your own scenario stuff, you just throw it all into that, and you can get playing with like anything that they add to this.
And to me, you're going to get a lot of value. You're really going to get a lot of value.
And even if this scenario we played, if we play it again, totally different.
It'll
play
be
it a third time, totally different.
Totally different. You're right. You're going to learn. You're going to grow. And it's funny, if you haven't watched our playthrough, it's kind of a mockery of a playthrough.
Well, yeah.
We are very slow normally with war games. We also try to discuss things back and forth, and this has a lot of rules. So you're going to have to dive back into the rule book for your first 3-4 plays. But I think eventually you're going to start to remember, I got to do this, and then I got to do a penetration roll, and and you're going to remember that stuff. And that comes with just playing it over and over again.
So I had a really good time with this game.
Me too.
It was kind of like playing with an old friend, because again we played it before years ago, and it was like, yes, this is something, and it just went through more and more development.
Yep.
And then obviously we've had some delays in the past couple of years, and it's finally on its way. I believe that this is expected to hit U.S. shores
probably in the summer
sometime. I think late summer, maybe in the fall sometime, which I'm so glad that it's finally come to fruition, because it's like,
it's been forever.
Yes,
it really is.
And it was
forever.
like, yes, this is so good. And it was like, when's it coming? When's it coming? And it's finally on its way.
And here's what I would say. Once again, trying to remember back almost 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I'm not sure it changed a whole lot.
I'm not a ton.
I feel like the game played very similar to what it is now as the final product, as it did 4.5 years ago. I'm sure they changed some cards or moved some numbers around.
Tightening it up a little bit.
But it really has the overall same feel, so it, like you said, feels like an old friend.
Well, and I remember that prototype, it had like, everything was cards. There's a couple sheets of counters for some of the admin stuff instead. So it's less, here's like 10 cards.
Yeah.
Which I think was a good choice. It's not a ton of counters, but it cleans up some of the stuff where it was like...
Yeah.
The fatigue with cards, and then the spaces with cards, and then there was it's a lot of paper on the board.
Yeah.
But the choices they made for some of the markers.
Yeah, I think it's a good decision. Yep.
But there's and I cannot stress to you how much is in this box.
Yeah.
There's a ton
A
in
lot.
here. This is the kind of game... We talked about Desert Island games recently.
Yeah.
This could be someone's Desert Island game
Because you're
very easily.
going to get replay after replay after replay out of it.
And no play of any scenario will ever be the same twice.
Right. I would agree.
So, Point Blank, V is a Victory from Lock and Load Tactical. Go on our website, check it out if you're interested.
Are they still pre-ordering it?
I don't know. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you can at least purchase it. I don't know if it's a pre-order price or...
Yeah, got it.
I'm just not sure. I should know, but I don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope that there's even more to come in the future as well, because it is a great system, and you could do basically anything with it. So, I had a blast playing this. Check it out if you're interested. Appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from PlayersAid.com.
And I'm Grant.